Okay, our topic for today is uh, is based on a tshuva of the Sridei Eish, a response of the Sridei Eish. Um, there was a theft from the the Coatroom in the Shul in Stuttgart. Now, this picture, by the way, on the graphic, is from a Shul in Stuttgart. So I don't know if it's, I don't know what's still around now, but this is an illustration of that Shul with the color. Now, um, the tshuva was asked by Rav Simcha Bamberger, uh, who eventually made Aliyah to Eretz Yisrael, but he was the Rav uh, of of Stuttgart, and and the Sridei Eish corresponded with him. This tshuva actually appears in in his tshuvas, and so I'd like to read the tshuva as it appears uh, in Rav Simcha Bamberger's, the shaila as it appears in Rav Simcha Bamberger's shailas and tshuvas. So he writes as follows: Beit HaKnesset Shalanu betoch Beit HaKihila HaGedola Sachur miParnaseha. So our shul is in the communal area, the communal buildings, which is a large communal area, which is rented from the Parnasim, which is the heads of the community. Uvavayit gam shar chadarim uleshachot. There are other rooms, there are other offices. Ubay min harachov letoch habayit. People come from the street into this to this structure, to this house. Ve'afilu echad min hashuk yachol lelech l'sham. Anybody can go in. Ve'ein sham shomer habayit karod. There's nobody who is a guard at the door. B'cheder asher lifnei Beit HaKnesset shalanu, in the door there, asu sham bardasei kilatenu vavim bechubarim al hakotel litlot et adorot. That's the way he's aderet is an overcoat. So the heads of the community, so they set up a coat room with hooks to hang your coats. Kodem boam lebeit HaKnesset, before they go into the shul. Ve'ata, now nignav aderet shel echad me'anshei kihila. One of the people in the community had his coat stolen. Welcome, Yochim. So one of the people in the community had his coat stolen. V'hu toen betanot al parnasei kihila she'im mechuyavim l'shalim, and he's claiming that the heads of the community have to pay. Now, Eni Odua, he says in parentheses here, Imhu Rotseshi Shalmumi Beitam. It's not clear if he's asking them to pay as individuals or Mimaot Akila, or from community money. Now, Chada, their claim is Kevan Shalpit Sivuyam Nasu Avavim. They were the ones. It was based on their orders that these hooks were made. So it follows, says the questioner, say the questioners, it follows that they're accepting responsibility for the clothing that is hung there. V'shenit kevan she'asru v'gam yefshar machmat tochen hamakom lehaniach et ha'idrot bebeit knesset atzmo. They prohibited bringing the coats into the shul because there's not enough room for the coats. So it follows that everybody has to hang their coats outside in that coat room. And so then it follows that they must pay if damage happens to one of those coats. Ushlishit, their third claim, and there's number one, they're the ones that ordered these hooks made. Number two, they don't let you put the coats in the shul, so you're forced to put them in this coat room. Shlishit, hu omer, this fellow whose coat was stolen says, Imratzu parnasei akila listalek min achrayut. If they wanted to take to vest themselves of responsibility, they should have put a sign up that says everybody puts their coats here at their own risk, which you will see every now and then in communal places, in coat rooms and those kinds of things. We take no responsibility, etc. They should have been clear about it. So That's the claim of the coat owner. Now, what about the parnasim? What about the heads of the community? אבל פרנסי הקהילה טוענים שמעולם לא עלה על דעתם לקבל עלייך בבית אשר כל אחד מן השוק יכול לבוא לשם. It never even crossed their mind to take responsibility over a place where anybody can walk in. ורק כדי להקל על אנשי הקהילה נשאו הידם עבבים. It was to make it easy for the people in the community that they made these hooks. People don't have to hang their coats there. They could wear their coats in the shul. They didn't expressly prohibit bringing coats into the shul. And the heads of the community on the one hand, and the person whose coat was stolen on the other, came in to ask the Shaila to Reb Simcha Bamberger, and he wrote a tshuva, which appears right here in this Sherit Simcha, which was his Shailas and tshuvas that were published, and he sent the tshuva to the Sridei Eish, Rabbi Yaakov Yechiel Weinberg. It's really Yechiel Yaakov Weinberg, if I'm not mistaken, and the Sridei Eish wrote a tshuva where he agrees with the conclusions of Rav Simcha Bamberger, which we'll see in a moment, but he doesn't agree with every point that Rav Simcha Bamberger said. So we'll now switch to the Sridei Eish himself, an annotated version of the Sridei Eish with some of the key, some of the key sources highlighted. So now, just to step back for a moment, what's the issue here? So again, we have the claims and the counterclaims. If you hung up these, you're taking responsibility. You should have said you're not. And there's no, we never thought about it. And people that those were the sort of the local on the street claims. But what are the halachic issues involved? So responsibility over theft for somebody whose somebody else's property is in their care. Well, this takes us back to the four Shomrim. This takes us back to the four types of guardians that are listed in the Chumash in last week's Parsha and are listed in the Mishnayos. The Shomer Chinam, Shomer Socher, and Shoel. The Torah speaks about four different guardians. It speaks about somebody who is doing a favor for somebody else and watching something. It talks about somebody who is being paid to watch things. The classic example being a shepherd. That's why the Torah, when it talks about Shomer Sachar, when it talks about a paid watchman, it talks about somebody watching animals, as opposed to when it talks about somebody doing a favor, it talks about watching objects. And then there is the borrower, who is using something of somebody else's with permission, and then the renter, who is paying for the ability to use. And the halachot are as follows. No shomer is able to be negligent. That's called peshia. And even a shomer chinam who is negligent, even if somebody who is doing somebody else a favor, let's say your neighbor comes, he says, "Listen, I'm going to Chutz La'aretz. I have this expensive bicycle. Can I put my bicycle? I usually keep it outside in the hall. Can I put it in your storage room while I'm away in Chutz La'aretz?" So you say, "Fine." So now you are not the watchman, the guardian. Even if he's doing a favor and he's not getting paid for it, still cannot be negligent. So he can't, let's say, leave the door wide open or what have you, in a way that it would be easily ruined or stolen. However, he's not obligated on anything else. He can't use the object. That's illegal. That's called shlichut yad. The shomer sachar, somebody who's a paid watchman, so he's obligated also for theft or loss, not only for pshia. However, If something happens beyond his control, he's not obligated. That's called onsin. A shoel, somebody who borrows, so he's virtually always obligated to compensate, except for a unique case, which is balavimo, and and that's one of the things that appears in last week's parsha. Finally, the socher is a machlokas in Chazal, and the way we view it is that it's similar to a shomer sachar. So it would be obligated. A renter would be obligated for theft or loss, but not for onsin, not for things that would be beyond control. Now, to say that the heads of the community, the parnasim, would be obligated for this code would be to classify them as a shomer sachar. They're definitely not borrower, and so you would have to classify them as a shomer sachar. Now, to classify them as a shomer sachar, well, you would have to say that they're somehow getting some benefit from this guardianship or this situation. So they're clearly not being paid to watch. And that's the way the Sridei Eish begins in the tshuva. Shalos tshuva Sridei Eish, it's Chelek Aleph, Siman Kuf Lamed Gimel. In the older editions, it's numbered a little differently. Im shamashe beit hakneset sheitiru lahaniach begadim b'cheder mesuyam v'nignevu bisham chayavim l'shalem. If the attendants, now it says here they titled it Im shamashe beit hakneset, but really the shaila was the parnasim, and he contrasts, I think, between the shamash and the parnas in the tshuva. So again, that might be an issue of the people who put in the titles. I don't think that's the Sridei Eish himself. In a certain room, v'nignevu misham, if they're stolen, if they have to pay. And so again, this is in Erev Shabbos Kodesh Va'era Tafresh Tzadi Zayin in Berlin. Rav Bamberger, it was on Monday of Parshas Miketz Tafresh Tzadi Zayin. So L'chvod Rav Agon, Moreno Rav Simcha Bamberger Shlita Av Beit Din Kadosh Stuttgart Yishmerenu Tsuro ve'yinterenu, I think that's the words. Achrei drishat shalom kvod tarat rabbeinu bidudut namana michtavo kibalti. I received your letter. V'lo aniti teko miyad. I didn't respond immediately. Ki hayiti tarud b'inyanim achirim. I was involved in other things, preoccupied. Ratziti la'arichim b'divrei Torah, and I wanted to speak at length with divrei Torah. Ach berati she'enani mufne. Some of the tshuvas of the Sridei Eish are extremely long. Some of the tshuvas in the Sridei Eish are really mini books, more like kuntrasim. But I wanted to speak at length in Divrei Torah. Ach biroti she'enani mufne kol tzarki laharich habe. I saw that I'm not available enough to speak at length. Estapek b'tshuvah k'tzara. I'll answer in short. Shani maskim ledat kvod Torat Rabbeinu. I agree. She'ena parnasim mechuyavim klal l'shalem barachafatzim shalom mitpalalim shehunchu b'rshut parnasim b'cheder miyuchad lekach. That the parnasim, the heads of the community, are not obligated at all to pay for the objects that the daveners put in that coatroom, in that special room. V'lo miboya she'en lam din shomrei sachar mikevan shelo kiblu shum sachar ala shmirah. They didn't get paid for watching, so they don't have a din of shomer sachar. Like you wrote, the lo grio mishamash she'eno shomer sachar. They're no worse than a shamas. Now, what's the din? Why would there be any difference between the shamas of the shul and the parnasim? Well, the shamas of the shul is the attendant. He's the person. Is the sexton. It's the person. And when I grew up, every shul had a shamas. Now I don't know, but in shuls in Eretz Yisrael we have gaboim. But the shamas was a paid position of somebody who did what was needed to be done in the shul, and there was a lot that needed to be done. So So the shamash gets a salary. Mishum deschar shamshuto hu notel velo schar shmira. So the shamash at least gets a salary from the shul. But still he's not a shomer sachar. Why? Because he's not getting paid to watch people's garments. He's getting paid to do what he has to do in the shul. He's getting paid to set up the kiddush. He's getting paid to call people up for aliyahs. He's getting paid to do to make sure that the shul's electric bill is paid and what have you. But he's not getting paid he's not a paid watchman. He's a person who is involved in that building who takes a salary, but he's not taking a salary for that. It's like somebody who works, let's say, there's a used car lot, a parking lot, and there's the guard at the parking lot who is being paid to watch, and then there's somebody who sets up the computers in the parking lot office, which is like let's say it's a massive parking lot with a lot of with a whole computer system. He's getting paid for setting up the computers. He's not getting paid for watching the cars. So he says, that is certainly the case here. She'enam notlim shum schar bayarot parnasim. They don't take any money for being the parnasim. Parnasim is these leaders of the community, etc., etc. Okay, so answer number one: he's not a shomer sachar. The parnasim are not shomrei sachar, because they're not paid to watch. It's as simple as that. Even a shamus who's paid is not paid to watch. Certainly they. Now, there's a proof that he brings. Okay, so that's point number one. Point number two, there is a precedent perhaps in the Rashba, in a tshuva of the Rashba, which is brought in the Shulchan Aruch, which says as follows. Again, he abbreviates it, but we'll read it inside. Okay, the Jewish community used to have to pay taxes. And it was a communal obligation, which they split up into individuals. But not everybody pays. So what happens if somebody doesn't pay their taxes? So the Ne'manei Kahal, the people that are the trustworthy officials of the Jewish community, of the autonomous Jewish community, so they would grab a deposit from him, a mashkon, because for the amount that he owes for the tax. V'nignava mashkon. What happens if let's say they grab his watch. He has an expensive watch. They grab his watch, but then the watch is stolen. Ein lakahal v'lo la'ne'eman din shomer sachar. They don't have the din of a shomer sachar. They grabbed his watch, but they're not getting any benefit from that. That's not the din of a shomer sachar. The source for this is a Tshuvas Rashba. The Rashba says like this. The Rashba was asked, Nistapakta, you were in doubt, b'misha nitmashkena idei ne'manei kahal, al chalko ha'magia lamas, the same thing. V'hitrubo kama pamim v'lo hava. They warned him a couple times, and he didn't agree to pay. So we're talking about a fellow who was a tough guy and not easy to deal with, and then it got stolen. Im nachshova ne'eman kishomer sachar hol v'nechale denafik alei kala degavra mehemnahu olo. Do we say that he has the din of a shomer sachar, the people, the trustworthy officials of the autonomous Jewish community, because they are like a shomer sachar because they're benefiting from their position because they're called trustworthy people, and so that reputation itself is worth something. O yishalmu lekahal. O yafsid bala mashkon. Do we say that the kahal, the community, has to pay, or do we say that the person whose mashkon it was, whose deposit it was, loses? So the Rashba himself says pshitali, and this is what the Shulchan Aruch paskins, the kahal miyapturim mishur sadin, that the community is pater. Umalawei tzalakal. What's this connection with the community? Meaning everybody, halo ein porei hamas chayavim zelazek klum. The people who are paying taxes, they don't owe taxes to each other. There's no relationship between it's not that this person owes the community and the community is grasping their loan. There is such a deen of a person who is taking a deposit for his own loan, money that is owed to him, and he's taking it not at the time of the loan itself. So then he does have a din of a shomer sachar over it, and that's based on a Gemara in Shavuos. Everybody owes their own taxes to the community, to the authorities. לפקח על עסקי כל יחיד ויחיד, פורח על גו לגבוס מכל יחיד ויחיד לפרוע. לשלטון או לבעל חוב שלו ומחמתו. Each individual has to pay, and those trustworthy community people, they're like guardians who are making sure that everybody does what they're supposed to do to the government. They're like enforcers, semi-enforcers. Either they or somebody who would be paying for them, but they're not, nobody owes, they're not like a malve. They're not like somebody who loaned money, who money has to be given to them. אלא הנאמן כאפוטרופו הוא שלוקח מנכסי היחיד כדי לכופו לפרוע חלקו. He's like a guardian who takes an individual's property to force him to pay to the government what he's supposed to pay. That seems to be the clear law. If there's some practice that goes against this, that's another story. Now, the Rashba goes on to say that the fact that they are considered trustworthy, that self, they're considered trustworthy in general, but they're given that position, but this particular mashkon isn't what's making them considered trustworthy. In other words, that's an independent thing. I didn't bring the rest of that tshuva, but he knocks down the fact that we don't say the fact that that the fact that they're an apotropos, they're like a guardian, that itself is schar for watching the mashkon. That itself is, that reputation comes to them independently. It's not that because they're watching this mashkon, they have some status of being considered specially trustworthy. Now, this idea that an apotropos, a guardian, has the status of a shomer sachar, that comes from a Gemara in Gittin. The Gemara says like this: Tani Rav Tachlifa bar Marava mishmei de Rabbi Avo. Rav Tachlifa said over this brisa, apotropos shemino avi yisomim, the father of orphans appointed a guardian. It sounds like before he passed away. So ishava mipnei shu nosei sachar. He has to take an oath because he's a shomer sachar. Amar le at aisa v'kaba v'kayil delay. Wait a second. You took a measure and you measured exactly how much he's paid. Ela emem neshahu kin nosei sachar. He's like a nosei sachar. So says the Rashba, that kind of a status of an apotropos he doesn't have. These Gambanido dinan ein leparnasim din shomrei sachar af bana misim shegovim yakahal v'lakumei mashkonot. They don't have the law of a shomer sachar, even though they are people who collect taxes for the on behalf of the community, and certainly for the clothing. Those clothing are not deposits at all. So certainly, based on the Shulchan Aruch's halacha, that the Nemanei HaKahal don't have the status of a Shomer Sachar. They don't have a status over a Shomer Sachar, even on deposits that they collected that were in their care. Certainly on something which is not a deposit at all, but then again, he discusses this. There's ins and outs in the tshuva here, but then the Sridei says something else. Up until now, we've been discussing why should the people whose shul it is, we'll say it that way, why would you think that they're responsible to pay to compensate for theft from the Coatroom? Answer, well, because they're Shomrei Sachar over it. Why are they Shomrei Sachar? They get no schar. Number one, that's what he said initially. And you're giving them, maybe because they have some position in the community, they get schar. They don't have any, the fact that those coats are in their care, they're not getting any schar for that. But he goes even further. He says, the whole discussion here is very strange. He has a whole discussion with a particular shach. He explains that just the fact that that somebody's doing a mitzvah doesn't make them a shomer sachar. Now, why would you ever think that? So step once again, why would you think they're a shomer sachar? Getting paid? They're not getting paid. Why would you think they're a shomer sachar? Maybe like an apotropos, like a guardian, sometimes has a status of a shomer sachar because of him being considered trustworthy. No, their trustworthiness is not because of their watching this thing. Their trustworthiness is because of their position in general, not because of watching something. They're not getting schar for watching. Number three, why might you consider them a shomer sachar? There's a concept called pruta de Rav Yosef. The Gemara says, again, that's the way we talk about this in Talmudic slang, pruta de Rav Yosef. But the source is in this Gemara in Baba Kama. Itmar, shomer aveda, somebody who is watching a lost object. So he found a coat, and he's got this coat in his house. Let's say he did what he's supposed to do as a Hashavas Aveda person. He publicized it in the right places. He's going to look for the owner. In the meantime, it's by him. What's his level of responsibility over it? Okay, so he can't be negligent. Rabba Amar Kashomer Chinam Dami. He's like a guardian who's not getting paid. Who's paying him? He doesn't even know who the owner is. So therefore, says Rabba, he has the din of a shomer chinam. He has the din of an unpaid watchman. So he can't be negligent. I mean, he can't, invite some thieves over to his house and tell them, take whatever you want, or leave it unguarded, or what have you. But Rav Yosef says, Rav Yosef Amar Shomer Sachar Dami. Rav Yosef says he has the din of a shomer sachar. Rabbi Amar Shomer Chinam Dami Mai Hanaka Matile. What benefit does he get? So of course he's a shomer chinam. Rav Yosef Amar Shomer Sachar. Again, the burden of proof is on Rav Yosef. Rav Yosef Amar Shomer Sachar Dami, a shomer aveda, somebody who's watching a lost object before he returns it to its owner. So he's like a shomer sachar. Why? Behahi hana'a de lo boya lemisvele rifta la'aniya have keshomer sachar. The benefit that he doesn't have to give bread, a loaf of bread to a poor person, he gets the status of a shomer sachar. What? So the explanation is as follows: as a shomer aveda, so he has got to take care of the object. Let's say it's a coat, you got to hang out the coat so it doesn't get moldy. And there's sometimes if you find an animal, so you have to take care of the animal. And certain things need more care. Certain things need less care. You found somebody's keys, somebody's car keys. You just put them on a shelf and go find the person. But there's a potential if you're dealing with the object that while you're doing what you're supposed to be doing with that as a shomer aveda, in the meantime, there would be an opportunity to give tzedakah, and you would not have that opportunity. That means that there's potential lack of loss, meaning there's the 5 shekels you would have given to the poor person that you won't give because you're out dealing with the hashavas with the aveda, and osik b'mitzvah pater min mitzvah. You're involved in the mitzvah of taking care of the aveda. You don't have to go give tzedakah during that. Now, that's one way of approaching, and that's what we refer to as pruta to Rav Yosef. Rav Yosef pruta, meaning the money you saved when you were involved with the aveda, that itself has the status, gives you the status of a shomer sachar. That's sachar. That's the borderlines of sachar. It's a little bit of sachar, but that's sachar. There are those who explain it differently, and I believe that the Sridei Eish is going to be emphasizing the second explanation in the Gemara. Rav Yosef Omer Shomer Sachar Dami, Keven de Rachmana Shabdei Bal Korche, Hilkach Shomer Sachar Damer. Because HaKadosh Baruch Hu, he gave him the obligation to watch, therefore he's a Shomer Sachar. In other words, let's read in the Sridei Eish's own explanation of this. Chidushila Bab Matzia Helesi Bezrat Hashem, the Iker Dina de Pruta Rav Yosef Hu Rak B'Shomer Aveda, the Belav Achi Umechayev B'Shmira Mitzad Chiyuv Torah Sheitilu Alav Shmira. This is a din that is limited to a Shomer Aveda. In other words, don't apply Shomer Pruta to Rav Yosef to anybody who's doing a mitzvah. So what are you going to tell me? The people who have the shul, they're doing a mitzvah by allowing the people to put their coats there. So therefore, that itself is a mitzvah, and therefore they're like a shomer aveda, and they have the status of a shomer sachar. No, we don't say anybody is doing a mitzvah. We don't say that every shomer chinam. He says this is what the Sridei Eish asks. We don't say every shomer chinam is also a shomer sachar, because he's doing a mitzvah by doing a favor to somebody. We don't say that. Rather, this is a din that is specific to a shomer aveda. This is a din that is specific to somebody who's watching a lost object. Because he said, Hashem gave them the obligation, people who found lost objects, Hashem gave them an obligation to take care of the object. What level of obligation of watching did Hashem give them? Were they given the level of shomer chinam or shomer sachar? Because they have this style of benefit, so we see, HaKadosh Baruch Hu gave them the din of a shomer sachar. Mashenki b'shomer chinam she'ein alav shmira ela im kibla b'rtzono atov. I'efshar l'chayvo b'chiyuvei shomer sachar mitam pruta Rav Yosef. But somebody who is a shomer chinam, well, even though he's doing a favor, but Hashem never gave him that obligation to watch. He took on himself the obligation to watch. Somebody who Hashem gave the obligation to watch, Hashem said, listen, I'm appointing you a watchman over the Aveda, and what's the level of your responsibility? That of a shomer sachar. That's what pruta Rav Yosef is. So that's limited to a shomer aveda, and don't go applying that to the parnasim somehow. And they said, listen, somebody was a shomer chinam and somebody stuck some money into their pocket. That makes him a shomer sachar? No, he never accepted on himself that level. But the shomer aveda was given that level. Now, al kol ponim adin bara she'en laparnasei al din shomer sachar. So, up until now, our discussion has always been: are they a shomer sachar or not? Are they a shomer sachar or not? They're not paid to watch. Number one, they're kal v'chomer from the ne'emanei kahal that are not considered shomrim on a mashkon that they took. That's really something that they took into their hands. Even they're not considered shomrei sachar over there. Certainly, these coats that people just stuck into the shul. However, and to say that somehow Pruter or Rav Yosef, the fact that they're doing a mitzvah gives them the status of a shomer sachar. No, that's a special din of a shomer aveda that HaKadosh Baruch Hu appointed to be a watchman over an aveda, and he gave him the status of a shomer sachar. It's not any time you're doing a mitzvah you get the status of a shomer sachar. However, here comes the most powerful aspect of this tshuva. Ulam barur beinai she'en lemaf din shomer chinam. They don't even have the status of a shomer chinam. Like the Shulchan Aruch, like you wrote, he said to Rav Bamberger, based on the Shulchan Aruch, Hanach stam afilu shomer chinam lo have. Well, that's based on a Gemara, which the Shulchan Aruch summarizes as this. The Shulchan Aruch defines a shomer chinam. Shomer chinam hu sheifgid etzlo kesef o kelim o behema kol davar lishmor. Somebody deposited money or vessels or an animal or anything to watch. Hu kibel alav l'shomro, and he accepted on himself to watch them. Vafilu lo kibel beferish, even though he didn't explicitly say it. Elo sha'amar lo, he said to him, hanach lefanai, leave it before me. Who shomer chinam? That gives you a status of a shomer chinam. Leave it before me. Aval imamar lo hanach lefanecha. Leave it there. Hanach lefanecha, in front of you. Oh, hanach stamar, leave it. Oh, shamar lo harei bait lefanecha. The house is in front of you. Afilu shomer chinam lo have. So it doesn't even have the status of a shomer chinam. So the people who put their coats here, the owners of the Parnasim, they are like Harei Abayit Lefanecha. The house is before you. You can put it there, but I'm not accepting responsibility over it. Meaning, to get the status of a shomer chinam even demands accepting the status of a shomer chinam. And there's another siman there's another sif in the Shulchan Aruch, and that same siman Reish Tzadi Aleph, which is more the definition of who's considered a shomer chinam or not. Mi shehu yadua bevadai she'eno ragil lishmor pikadon elo lemosro biyad acher she'eno sharui beveiso ve'eno somech kol Shulchan Aruch dinu kamoso lebnei veiso. Somebody who is not doesn't normally watch a pikadon. The Parnasim are certainly in that category. They don't watch a pikadon. He gives you an example there from another shilos and chuvas. She'ein bala rechayim shomer latvot shemevim la rechayim shelo. Let's say somebody owns a mill, and people he owns the mill, and people bring their wheat there to mill. They pay him for the use of his mill, but he doesn't accept responsibility. It's not his derech to watch the wheat by the mill, so he's not responsible. He's not a shomer chinam even. We won't consider him poshea for not locking up his mill. And he finally says, it's very clear that the parnasim are not obligated to pay for that coat, and what you paskined is correct. Shaparnasim pturim l'shalim bada begadim agnuvim lo mikisam v'lo mikisayde. They don't have to pay out of their own pocket. They don't have to pay from the community pocket. They never even have the status of shomrim, and even if they did, they wouldn't have the status of a shomer sachar for a number of reasons. The Prutu Rav Yosef only applies to a shomer aveda. The fact that they have a somehow this helps their reputation. Watching these coats is not what's giving them their reputation. Their reputation is because they're community leaders who have a shul, just like the Nemanei Kahal in the Rashba's tshuva. Their reputation is precedes taking that mashkon, and then finally they're not getting paid to watch kiputo. But they're really not even shomrim at all. If they were shomrim, they would definitely not be shomer sachar. So nowadays, again, this ask your every shul probably has to deal with what are they going to do with stuff that is in their coat rooms. And a lot of times people put up signs that are very, very clear. Here in the shul in Stuttgart, it sounds like there was nothing clearly stated. It sounds clear that there was nothing clearly stated. But and nowadays a lot of places do things in a very clear-cut way. But a lot of places that don't do things in a clear-cut way, let's say a small shul that's just starting out, there's a coatroom, and it's in a new neighborhood in Israel in some caravan, or there's a shul that starts in an outreach center, and they're not, the shul just sort of emerge, they get a minion together, or there's so those kind of things. A lot of times they don't think about this stuff, and then they would have to ask shilas about this, or have to go to a din Torah. Anyways, that's what I wanted to share with you. This tshuva of the Sridei Eish about the shul, the people of the shul in Stuttgart not being responsible for the coat that was stolen from the coat room.